And while you're doing that, I'll say hello. This is Jessica Pierce. I'll be our presenter today. And it looks like we have folks from all over the place. That's really exciting. I always love it when we get drug courts from all around the country because everyone kind of has different ways of doing things. And I think it's really important that we learn from each other. So as you're writing in chat, one thing you'd like to learn today, I'm just going to kind of keep an eye out and comment on that. So how to transition a new judge. And that can be one of the most challenging parts of team transition is when you get somebody like a judge who kind of, is a leader on the team, and that can be difficult. How to have a good conversation, collaboration with team members, no arguing. Yeah, absolutely. It can be hard when you're working in a team. Everybody has a pretty strong point of view, so figuring out how to do that without having people butt heads. How to develop a drug court in your area. We might not quite cover that on this one, but our last webinar on the JDC 101 goes over some of those basics, Paula, and we can also come out and help you with your planning. So if you're interested, I think you should send us an email, and we can talk more specifically about what we can do for you. How to make staffing more efficient. Absolutely. And Angel, we're not really going to be talking about treatment on this webinar, but on one of our future webinars, we are definitely going to be doing that. How to stop having so many staffings without progress. Great idea. The role of a newly added defense counsel. Absolutely. So here's the good news about team transition. It is a really important part of your program, your team, and having team members transition into the program and be oriented to what you do and also buy into the philosophy of your program and your court is really, really vital, but it's also not hard. So sometimes when we think about things we want to change in our juvenile drug courts, some of those things are hard, like figuring out who the right target population is or thinking about like creating a new incentives and sanction program. Those things are hard and they sometimes take a long time. Team transition, though, is something that you can really have a good plan for after just really a month or so of planning. So the good news is that this is important but easy. I do want to mention that the points of view expressed today are those of the presenter and don't represent the official position or policy of our funders, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, or the U.S. Department of Justice. So before we really get into talking about how easy team transition is, I do want to tell you a little bit more about the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges. You can see there on the screen that actually is one of our booths at a conference, and then also our 16 Strategies poster. The 16 Strategies form the foundation of juvenile drug courts, and they came out of suggestions from practitioners just like all of you. If you don't have a 16 Strategies poster and want one, go ahead and send us an email after the webinar, and we'd be happy to send one out to you. So let me tell you a little bit about our Juvenile Drug Court project. And I sometimes start this, and I'll start it today, by telling you, you can think of us as kind of walking dollar signs in a way, because we get funding from the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention to provide training and technical assistance to juvenile drug courts all around the country. So that means that my whole job is to help you improve your program. So if there are things that you're not sure about, if there are things that you're struggling with, if you have questions about things, I have money to train you on those things. So if it's about target population, if it's about roles and responsibilities of your team member, or if it's about how trauma impacts kids in the drug court, that's all part of our purview. So I can't hire you new staff, I can't get you a new caseworker, but I can really train all of your staff, and that's my job. So think about working with the National Council to get your needs met, because that's what we're here for. I will say that we're funded currently, I believe, through 2018. So this does not have to be a decision you make today, but you should be thinking about us. I'll tell you also that we have a project advisory committee that's made up of folks that are experts in all kinds of things. Because just like we ask you to work together as a team, we work together as a team on the national level. So we work together with the National Child Traumatic Stress Network and the National Center for Mental Health and Juvenile Justice. We're working together with the American Probation and Parole Association, the National Juvenile Defender Center, the American Prosecutors Association. So we want to have, just like you have a team around the table, we have a team on the national level, and we want to make sure that we're always bringing you the best information we can for everyone on your team. And we do that through a number of different initiatives. We have training, and some of our training is like this, where we're doing it, distance education. We also come out to your state drug court conferences. So if you happen to be on your committee that's planning your statewide drug court conference and want to have some juvenile-specific content, give us a call, because we have lots of training that we can come out and offer, and we can pay for experts to come. And then we also can come and train on a local level. So if you have a topic, again, that you really just want your team to be trained on, if it's trauma, if it's mental health, if it's drug testing, we can come and train your team. So think about us for that. The other side of that is our technical assistance, which we also offer to teams. Technical assistance is a little more targeted. So if you request technical assistance, that can range from just calling and asking us a question on the phone to having us come out on site. And when we do on-site technical assistance, we're actually looking at your program. We sit in on staffing, we sit in on the court, and we give you feedback on how your court is operating, and we do training with you that's very, very specific on any challenges you're facing. The other thing we have are resources online, and we're going to talk more about that actually a little bit later on in the webinar, because we do think that the online resources can be great for new team members. So we'll be talking about that. But we are always trying to figure out how to give you tools to help you do your jobs better. In the little window just above the chat window, it says Files. And in there you can see we have a copy of today's PowerPoint. And then right underneath that is a copy of a publication called the 7 Series, and there's actually an article written called 7 Easy Steps to Team Transition. And it's literally 2.5 pages, and it goes through and lays out how to transition new folks onto your team. That is what this webinar is based on, and it's one of our resources we have for you. Everything that we're writing now for folks that work in juvenile drug courts are really short and really concrete, with really specific, easy things you can do to make a change in your practice immediately. Because we know you're busy. You guys have a lot on your plates. I always tell people that we do this work because we believe in the work that you do. We believe that you are making a difference in the lives of the children and families in your community. And we know that that's hard. So we want to make sure that you have what you need as quickly and easily as possible. So that's the other part of our goal here at the National Council. And then the last thing I want to tell you about the work at the National Council is I want to tell you about our Learning Collaborative project. We have lots of ideas about how things might work in juvenile drug courts, and we are from the ivory tower, so I know theoretically how things work. But I also know that in real life, you have other things that you have to deal with. So you don't have a perfect system with everything working optimally all the time. You have to face real-life challenges. And so what we wanted to do is work with courts around the country to ask them to try out things, to experiment with us, and to let us observe what happens. Let us observe the process and see if we change how the drug court works. So we have 12 courts right now in our Learning Collaborative process, but we want to add 6 more. So in a few weeks, we're going to be putting out an application for new Learning Collaborative sites. And if that's something that you think you would be interested in, helping us experiment and really determine how research translates into practice and how practice can support research, then I would encourage all of you to apply. The application process is scored blindly, so that means that once your application is submitted, we actually don't know who you are or where you're from until after we've made our selection. So we do make our court selection based entirely on the criteria that we have and what you put in your application. And the fact that we currently have Hawaii as a site is entirely coincidental. But we're looking for courts from all around the country. We're looking for big courts and little courts. so we can try these things out. So if it's something where you think you might be interested, go ahead and give us a call or apply through the application process. Today we are going to be talking about team transition. Again, this is really, really vital. The research is very, very clear that teams, drug courts become less successful as teams drift away from their mission. And the easiest way to drift away from your mission is to replace most of your team members. So we know that this is a really important thing to get new team members to come on board who are in line with the mission and who understand their jobs on a juvenile drug court team. We're going to discuss the importance of planning for team transition. We're going to explore different ways you can do team transition. And we're going to talk about a piece that I think we often forget, which is that in order for folks to be successful on a juvenile drug court team, they have to have an opportunity to really buy into the philosophy. They have to believe in therapeutic jurisprudence, and they have to understand that the court comes from a strength-based place. So that is sometimes the piece that I think people get really hung up on when they're new to the team, that they think, why are we operating this way? Why are we using a team approach? And so thinking about ways to help new team members understand those things and believe in them is really important. The other thing we know from research, team members matter. All of you matter. The research is very, very clear that the longer your team has served and the more training your team gets, the better the outcomes are for youth and families. And so that's why it's really important for all of you to be trained and for everybody who comes after you to also have an opportunity to understand their roles on the team and the reason why you operate the way you do. Today, then, we're going to be talking about how to orient new team members and why we orient new team members and why it's really, really important to get them to buy into what you're doing. Right, so we want to do a poll and find out how all of you were oriented. So it says trial by fire. Yeah, that's often the case, right? You just kind of get thrown into the deep end. None, none, none. Just good luck. We hope you understand what you're doing. I did this presentation with a coordinator once, and she was saying that the previous coordinator walked into her office with 3 big binders of information, put them on her desk, and walked out, and that was the entirety of her orientation. In terms of team process, wow, it sounds like in Kevin's court they do a lot to train about at least what juvenile drug courts are all about. And, oh, you wish you'd gotten binders. Yeah, see, sometimes we don't even get the big binders. It is really something that's challenging. But like Lisa, she had her previous ADA who stayed involved, and that meant that she got to really have somebody who could help shepherd along the process. And this is you guys are actually jumping ahead to how were you oriented. So for those of you that got good orientation, or even if you got bad, let's go ahead and write into chat some different ways that folks have been oriented. Got binders, yep. So Anne was attending trainings, and I think that's really, really nice if new team members can go to trainings like this one or other trainings that offer kind of that broad perspective about what juvenile drug courts are all about. Yeah, you kind of understand it by going to conferences. Lots of states have conferences. Of course, there's the national conference. being able to meet with the person who came before is always really great, like Kathleen got to do. Judge Sampson talked with the previous judge for an hour, and then good luck. Lots of reading. Yeah, isn't that funny how it's really just kind of like reading and good luck? And it's really interesting, I think, because you can read it and you can kind of understand it from a theoretical framework, but then when you see the team operating, you start to think, well, that's not exactly what I read now, is it? And so there's always a disconnect, I think, between practice and what the theory is. Went over rules together. There's a handbook that Colette got. Ryan, really, I think that's smart to beg the person leaving to stick around and give you some good training. So you guys actually are identifying a lot of the things that we identified as great ways to train new team members. And I don't think it's any surprise that organically some of the best ways to orient new team members your courts are doing. I want to show, before we go on to the next bit, I want to show kind of a funny video about how folks get oriented in other fields. Because I think what's kind of ironic to me is that in our juvenile drug courts and in our court system altogether, you get training about what your job is. But then when you come into something like this that's really specialized, there isn't a lot of training, even though it's really actually kind of hard. It's a hard job. There's a lot of different things you have to know about. You're working with families and kids that are sometimes in terrible circumstances. So I want to talk about how they train in other fields. And so I have a funny video. This comes from an old training video for the Wendy's hamburger restaurant. And this is how they train their staff. I'll mention that the audio for this comes through your computer speakers, not through the phone. So if you have your computer speakers currently muted, you should unmute your computer speakers and get ready for fabulousness. Okay, let's go ahead.
Coffee, decaf, tea, and hot chocolate. Those are the hot drinks that you serve, so get set. Hot cups come in two sizes. Small and large to fill as the need arises. Coffee's holding time is 30 minutes, that's so long. It can stay there before it starts to taste too strong. Hot, hot, careful when you pour it. Hold it steady upon the counter, let it sit. Pour it in until the coffee reaches the line. Pop a top on it, gets a lid every time. Wendy's coffee tastes so fine. Hot drinks really get you going. Warm you up when you feel you're slowing. Wendy's, we always serve it right away. Have a smile and have a nice day. Next is the caffeine brew, it's just like coffee. Use the orange pot, it makes it easier to see. But if you're using the packets in your store, put it in the small cup and furthermore, add hot water up to the line and stir it in. Put a lid on and serve it on a tray again. Get a small cup when you're ready for hot tea. Fill with hot water, it's easy as can be. Put the lid on and set the tea bag on the top. If they want lemon, it's very nice. Don't think twice, give the guests a juicy slice. Hot drinks really get you going. Warms you up when you feel you're slowing. Wendy's, we always serve it right away. And a smile and have a nice day. Grab a small cup when you're making hot cocoa. Pour the packet and then you add your H2O. Use a clean spoon and stir it till it's all mixed up. Toss the spoon out and put the lid on the cup. Things are really looking up. Hot drinks really get you going. Warms you up when you feel you're slowing. Wendy's, we always serve it right away. And a smile and have a nice day.
if I could figure out a way to show that video in every training I do, I'd be a happy person. I think it's so great, and I've got to tell you, there's a whole series of those. So not only is there the Wendy's training video for hot drinks, there's one for cold drinks, and there's one for chili, and all kinds of different things. So if you're ever bored, I would suggest you Google Wendy's training videos because they're the best, and obviously so very informative. I love how much direction you get for pouring a cup of coffee. You put the cup on the counter, you hold it, and then you pour the coffee in. Very, very specific, lots of steps, and that is how we train folks to manage our hot drinks at our fast food restaurants. But we ask folks who come into our courts to just, good luck. You're going to be fine. This is an easy job, no problem. Not a lot of higher order thinking or decision making to be done. You can do this. And so I would love to see, and if any of you want to take up this challenge, I will be happy to broadcast this everywhere. If you would like to make your own rap video to orient your new team members, that would be basically the dream. If anybody out there is into that and is interested in doing that for your team members, we would be very excited to promote that on the national level. But it is. You got to think about what people really need to know. So that's what I want to know from all of you now, is when you came onto your team, because I'm going to guess that most of you, and actually we have a poll question about this. Let's ask this poll question first, about how many of you transitioned onto the team. Yeah, so you can see 3/4 of you just about transitioned onto the team. So you came from someplace else. You weren't there when they made the program. You weren't there when the policies and procedures were decided. You transitioned into this position. And so the question I want to know from all of you then is, what do you wish you had known? When you came onto your team, what's the one thing you wish they told you about? What's the one thing that you found out like 6 months later where you were like, oh, if I had known that, it would have made a lot more sense. And we're actually going to capture some of your responses on a notepad sort of up here on the main screen, but go ahead and just write them all into chat. Yeah, what your specific duties and role is, because sometimes it's not very clear. The most effective structure. Yeah, so you come onto a juvenile drug court and you're not even entirely sure if what's happening in your court is really what should be happening. And sometimes that can be hard if you try to bring that up with the existing team members, right? Roles and duties. Yeah, so see, it's the same kinds of themes where everybody kind of comes in, maybe a part of the job, but you don't know all of it. The regular rotation schedule, meeting staffings, etc. Yeah, logistics. There's so many times where everybody who's been doing it for a long time really understands the logistics. They get it. They know when they're supposed to show up. They know what happens at staffing. And if you're new and you come in, you just don't necessarily know. Judge Jackson, best practices compared to what was being done. Yep, sometimes you don't know if what the team is doing is right, and it can feel weird. And maybe it's not right, and so being the person who says, hey, I don't know if we should do this way, that can be hard. And who does what? Yeah, it's not only your own roles and responsibilities you've got to worry about, it's what all of the other people on the team do, because it's a team process, and we often say that people sort of step outside of their traditional roles. So if you're new, like if you're a new treatment provider or a new caseworker and you come in, you might not automatically know who the judge is or who the prosecutor is, because they're not acting like you would expect a judge or a prosecutor to act. And so that can be really confusing and disconcerting. And then how to make things not fall through the cracks, especially if you get a lot of team turnover kind of all at once. So maybe over the course of a year you have 3 or 4 different team members that leave. It can be really hard to figure out what your team is supposed to do and how it's supposed to operate, because you really have to kind of start from scratch. And personality differences. Yeah, working on a team, that's one of the big challenges, is that you've got lots of different folks with lots of different ideas and sometimes different ethical responsibilities, different agendas, different ways that they've approached their job in the past. And so coming together as a team can be really difficult. And I want to tell you that the team approach is really foundational to problem-solving courts, and it's really hard, and it takes work. It's like marriage. It takes work. And so it's one of those things, when you work together as a team, you have to spend time thinking about how you operate as a team. And every time a new team member comes on board, you're a new team. Each new person changes the dynamics, and that means you've got to go back and rebuild the team again. And sometimes it's less noticeable. Maybe you just add a new treatment provider, you've got a new person coming into the team, and that's not so hard. But maybe sometimes it's the judge or the coordinator, and those are kind of the people that hold the glue that holds your court together. And so when they go, you really don't know how to be that same team that you were, and you have to become a new team. So I would encourage all of you, when you get new team members, to keep in mind that you're not going to be the same as you were, and that you have to make a change. And that can be daunting, but it's something that has to happen. All right, so let's talk about some really concrete ways that you can orient new team members. One of the ways that when we look at the literature about how this works in other places, when you don't have the Wendy's hot drinks video to show to people, but in other professional settings, they recommend creating learning packets. And so this is something really easy that you can give to new folks. It's not 3 binders, but it is something smaller and more easily digestible. So it's a description of the program, the list of stakeholders with contact information, the list of the community partners and how and when and why they're used, the current participant handbook, the policy and procedure manual, and the team charter. So what else should go into a learning packet? Have I missed anything? So if you see something that you would like to see in a learning packet, can you write it into chat? Oh, and yeah, put your mission in there. Absolutely. I think the mission is a great way to help get new team members started down that path to buying in, so that they understand what the purpose is and what you're trying to accomplish. Let them know what's expected of families and youth, and that can be kind of, I think, probably a wide-ranging discussion, but having sort of the basics about why you do what you do and what you're wanting as ultimate outcomes for the kids would be really helpful for new team members to know. Oh, some theory information, Pauline. So how a cohesive team forms and what you'll go through in the process. Yeah, that can be something that would be really helpful for new team members to know about the fact that they're coming into a team, and here's what teams are like. Court schedules, dates, job description, roles, who's on your team. Yeah, some really, really specific logistical information. Here's when you have to show up, and here's why. Lisa, you're suggesting schedule regular small meetings with new team members. Yeah, getting together with team members to go over the orientation packet or do other kinds of orientation is really important. And then, ethical considerations with regard to confidentiality. I love that you brought that up, because I think new team members don't always understand information sharing and what that means for them, no matter what their role is on the team. Certainly we always think of the judges and the attorneys as having really specific confidentiality requirements, but everybody on the team needs to agree that, that they're going to have more information about clients and families than they would have in a different setting. And they have to agree to abide by kind of a confidentiality rule, not not using the information they learn in drug court against youth and families out in the community, not having those kind of hallway conversations and other things. And so that actually is really a great point to think about ethical considerations. And then information about treatment. And I think for folks that are coming into juvenile drug court from the court side of things, so that's our new caseworkers, that's our new attorneys, that's our new coordinators, our new judges, understanding treatment and what a therapeutic jurisprudence looks like and why a juvenile drug court is a therapeutic court can be really, really confusing. And so if you have a new team member that comes on board, like your new judge, like a new caseworker, like new attorneys, I think figuring out how to get them more information about treatment and how treatment works is really a great idea. And then, Amy, back to logistics, the do's and don'ts of filing paperwork, court orders, et cetera. Yeah, and sometimes it's sort of what information is expected from you as a team member isn't necessarily communicated very easily until after you've done it wrong for a few weeks. And then the team looks at you, and maybe you're a new caseworker, and they say, hey, you're supposed to be getting the grades from the school. Can you get on that? And it might not be something you know you're supposed to do. And then, Philip, your point, I think, is a great one for us to end this conversation on, which is acronyms. Yeah, both court and treatment have their own jargon that they're using, and understanding what all of that jargon means can be really, really challenging for new team members. So a list of, hey, here's our jargon, and here's what it means can be really helpful. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the team charter and the fact that you are on a team. Teams don't often take the time to make a plan for being a team. You just kind of come together and everybody sort of starts talking and you kind of start making decisions and sort of something comes up and ad hoc you decide on something, and then that's just how you do things. So we would like to encourage, though, everyone to have instead a team charter. And so this is something where you would actually sit down as a team right now and you would decide, what is the purpose of your team? How will new team members be oriented? What are the roles and functions of each team member? What are your assignments? And then norms. So that's kind of how do you operate? Do you guys start and stop your meetings on time? Do you have somebody who's always going to be a designated note taker? What do you believe as a team that you want to be your rules? Decision making is something that teams struggle with a lot. So when you're in case staffing, how do you make decisions? Does everybody vote? Do you try to come to consensus? Do people make recommendations, but then the judge is the ultimate decision maker? You have to talk about how you want to make decisions in order to avoid those kind of arguments and things that come up with your team. So next time you have a team meeting, I would suggest spending 10 minutes at the beginning of the meeting to say, hey, how do we want to make decisions? Because I bet everybody at the table has a different understanding of how you make decisions. Some people may think you're trying to come to consensus. Some people may think you're voting and majority rules. And the judge might be thinking, well, the buck stops with me, so I have final decision making, and it doesn't really matter what the team thinks. So I would suggest if you haven't had that conversation in a while or ever, that's one of the first things that you do as part of this team transition planning, is that you really decide who you are as a team and how you want to act. And then you want to have checkpoints. So you want to build in for yourselves times where you get together and talk about who you are as a team. And so that can be every 3 months, every 6 months, so that you're doing that sort of big picture conversation regularly. We know that teams that do this are more effective. They have programs that operate more effectively, which leads to better outcomes for youth and families, our ultimate goal. All right, so another thing you guys have already identified as a strategy for orienting new team members is to shadow existing team members. And the very, very best thing that could happen is that you get hired, the new team member gets hired a month or so before the existing team member is going to leave, so that they can spend lots of time following their predecessor around and figuring out how things work, get a real feel for the job. Or that person still is in the court system. I know with judges a lot of times we see that it's a rotation issue. And so a judge rotates out, but they don't leave the court system. And so they're still available to consult with the current JDC judge. And that also can be very helpful. You can consider making a checklist of information and duties that should be shared during the shadowing. So it's not just that you're saying, hey, we're getting a new coordinator, so you're going to spend the week with the old coordinator. I think you should have a plan and an agenda for what you want to accomplish. I think if there's one message you hear during this webinar, have a plan and have an agenda for what you want to accomplish. Don't try to just guess or make it up. And it may seem daunting to come up with the plan, but really it takes just a few minutes to write down your list and then go through it with your new team members. So an example, if you have a new coordinator coming in, you want the old coordinator to review incentives and sanctions tracking procedure, because that's a job that the coordinator has to do that may not make a lot of sense to new folks coming in. You want to review the file sharing procedure because, again, the coordinator is the person who maybe is the hub, so he or she gets all of the information and then distributes it back out to the team. And then review pre-court staffing. What do you need to bring to pre-court staffing? What are you expected to tell folks about? What are people going to be asking you? What are you going to have to do after staffing but before court? All of those things are things that the new coordinator would need to know. And you can go through each one of your roles and come up with kind of the same checklist. So we want you to think about those resources. And so all of you kind of identified lots of reading that you got to do as part of your new job. And I know here at the National Council, when we get new folks on board, they spend their first 2 weeks just going through a big pile of stuff that we put on their desk because there's a lot we want them to know about. And we do a lot of these other strategies too. You know, we shadow. We consider, you know, we use the buddy system. We give them a buddy to help them and answer their questions. But it's still a lot of reading. And so the National Council, because, again, we're here to serve you, we've gone through and we've created a lot of easy-to-use publications so that new team members can come in and say, oh, that's what you mean by incentives and sanctions. I totally get it now. So that's our job. And I want to show you, in particular, one really fun thing that we've been working on with the Center for Court Innovation. So I'm actually going to take you out to the web now. We're going to leave the safe confines of our webinar, and we're going to go out here to the internet, where we're going to look at the Center for Court Innovation, the National Drug Court Online Learning System. And the URL for this is drugcourtonline.org. And you can see there's a login. You can get a free login. I'm going to use mine right now. And you can see they start with the adult drug court content, but we have juvenile content. So if you are new to a juvenile drug court and you want to watch a juvenile drug court operate, you come right down here to see the virtual site visit, and you can actually watch the King County Juvenile Drug Court in operation. They talk to all of the different team members about what they do and why they do it. If you want to know more about, like, the role of the judge, we had a bunch of judges talk to the folks at the Center for Court Innovation and tell you what their role is, what the role of the prosecutor is, the role of the public defender. So this is a great place to come if you're a new team member to get that kind of grounding in what the job looks like. And they're great. They're short videos. Most of them are 5 to 7 minutes long. The folks at the Center for Court Innovation have done such a great job of really getting to sort of the heart of the information. We have courses up here. These are actually longer trainings like the one you're kind of doing now. We have one that talks all about adolescent development. So when you come to a juvenile drug court, that means you're working with kids, and understanding how kids think and why they make decisions is really, really helpful in how you treat them and how you react to some of their behaviors. So we have working with adolescents. We have understanding adolescent chemical use. Drug use in kids is different than drug use in adults, and understanding how that's different and why is really helpful. Mental health needs. Kids, well, and most folks in the system come with lots of issues, and mental health is one of them. And so understanding mental health and how that affects the youth in your drug court program can be really helpful. Developing accountability in the lives of youth. So that's the the other prong of the drug court, right? We want to help habilitate them, and we also want to hold them accountable. And how do you do that? And then the 7 easy steps to confidentiality and information sharing. So this is a great place for that thing that we were just talking about. When you have new team members, how do you ensure confidentiality? I would suggest everybody come on over and create their own login and experiment with what's on the platform. We have lots of new content that's coming, so you can check back really regularly. There's going to be new stuff all the time. All right, now we're coming back to our regularly scheduled program. So here's how you create a team transition plan. You decide you're going to do it. That's the first thing. And then you're going to create a subcommittee, because you don't need to have the entire team. You know, you have 7 or 8 or 9 or 17 people on your team, but everybody doesn't have to be part of the team transition plan. You pick 2 or 3 people who are kind of interested in coming up with the plan, and then the subcommittee is going to meet. And you're going to meet a couple of times, and you're going to create a list of the need-to-know information about the program, and you're going to develop the strategy for assisting new team members, whether it's going to be you want them to shadow current team members or you're going to give them a buddy on the team, however you're going to do that. Then you're going to ask each team member to create their own transition plan, where they are going to write down the key functions of their job, so that if they walked out the door, they could hand it to somebody, and that person could have a reasonable expectation of being able to do at least the basics. And I'll tell you, if you have a new team member, putting them on the committee to develop team transition plans is a great idea, because they will no doubt have lots and lots of thoughts about it, and it'll help them buy into the program. All right, now I want to talk really briefly about policy and procedure manuals. So first, I have a poll question about policy and procedure manuals. I want to know, do you use your policy and procedure manual? So here comes the poll. And our choices are yes, frequently, yes, sometimes, and no, not really. All right, I'm going to show you guys the results. You guys are pretty evenly split between all 3 options, though no, not really is kind of winning in that horse race, and that's not uncommon. We have lots of drug courts that we work with, and it seems like a lot of times you develop the policies and procedures, everybody on the team kind of understands them, and then they sort of just go on a shelf, and so you don't necessarily refer back to them very regularly. And that's normal, but it's sort of the roadmap for your court. It's a way to get new team members oriented, and it's also a way to hold yourselves accountable to see if you're doing what you said you were going to do. So now I want to know, about 1/3 of you are using them frequently, 1/3 of you are using them sometimes, and 1/3 of you aren't using them. So I want to know how regularly your policy and procedure manuals are updated. So that's our next poll question. So the question is, how recently was your policy and procedure manual updated? Within the last 6 months? Within the last 7 months to 1 year? More than a year ago? And more than 2 years ago? And Amanda has no idea, and that's not uncommon. So if you don't have any idea, then I'm going to guess it hasn't been in the recent history of your court. All right, and I'm going to show you guys the results. So it looks like we're pretty evenly split between either within the last 6 months or at least more than a year ago, with a lot of them not being updated for 2 years or more. And so again, for all of you, and I know some of you, you're not the judge, you're not the coordinator, you're the case manager, you're the attorney, but I'll tell you that everybody on the team has a responsibility to the team, and so it's your job just as much as anybody's job to say, hey, let's update our policy and procedure manual. Let's talk about this a little bit, because when we think about orienting new team members, one of the very first things you're going to give them is the policy and procedure manual. I was just working with a court last week, and the attorney brought in their MOU, the district attorney's office brought in their MOU, and they said, this is our MOU, but I don't think we do this anymore. And they went through the MOU with the team while we were there, and it turns out that the practice had changed drastically from what everybody had agreed to. And so they had to have a conversation about whether or not they needed to change the MOU to reflect their current practice, or if they needed to change their practice to go back to reflecting their MOU. How often should you change your policy and procedure manual? Well, I'll tell you, you don't have to always change it, but it has to be a living document. And so what we would love to see is for courts to get together about once a year to just talk about your program. We love to encourage retreats where everybody gets together at a spot that is not their offices and just talks about the business of running a juvenile drug court. Again, we know from research that is helpful, and we know from team members that that's helpful. So that's a great way to get new team members to buy in because they're going to the annual retreat and they get to kind of have a say. It's a way to go through your policies and say, are we still doing what we said we would do? It's a way to reaffirm your mission and remind yourselves of why you do this work, because day to day it's exhausting, but when you look at it in that big picture way, you're like, yeah, we're making changes. This is a good thing. You can get over kind of those times that you sort of get frustrated and the process drags you down. So how do you decide what goes into your policy and procedure manual? I'm going to really quickly run through what should be in your policy and procedure manual. Because again, this is the document that tells your court how you operate. This is really important for new team members. This is really important for existing team members. So you want to have who's on your team and how decisions are made. And this goes back to that team charter. This is the piece that I see missing from most drug court policy and procedure manuals, that there's nothing to say, here's who we are as a team and here's how we make decisions. So I think it's really important to include that. And if you don't have it, then this is a great time to go back and add it. A description of your program's mission statement and your goals. Why are you in this business? Your program operations. So how do you operate? How frequently do you meet? Do you have a steering committee? What does that look like? All of those pieces of the logistics of your court. And then you get into things that are really specific to your clients. Your target population and eligibility criteria, the referral process, graduation requirements and termination, and then a description of treatment. And again, this treatment is often left out of policy and procedure manuals because policies and procedures are sort of driven by the court, but having a description of treatment can be really helpful for your existing team members and then certainly as new team members come on board. What else do you want to have in there? Your requirements for family members. We know that engaging families is really, really key to success for kids, and so you have to be thoughtful about what you actually want, and we'd like to see more concrete requirements for families rather than sort of ad hoc deciding, well, we kind of want families to come to every court session, but if somebody can't because of work, we'll excuse them. And if she calls and she has a good excuse, then we won't worry about that mom coming this week. What we want is we want you to have a actual plan. And we want you to sit down and think about, well, what's the minimum amount of family engagement that we want? And how do we define families? And so if you don't have this piece in your policy and procedure manual, again, it's an easy thing to go back and add. And we would really highly encourage you to do so. And then going back to those things that are vitally important for dotting your I's and crossing your T's, your information sharing policies, confidentiality policies, and memorandum of understanding. And the difference, I think, between policies and procedures is that policies are more official and a little bit more legally binding. They might require approval from boards or agencies or other heads of agencies. in order for you to enact them. And so policies, you want to be there. You don't have to have a policy for everything that your drug court does, but there are some things where you really have to have policies, and that's these things. And then everything else can be a procedure where it's the court decides how the court wants to operate, and that's your procedure. All right. Oh, and here, I've made a special slide even about it because confidentiality and information sharing is really, really vitally important. I suggest that all of you, after this webinar, if you have some time to kill this afternoon or tomorrow afternoon, go to drugcourtonline.org and view that information sharing video that's there. Bridget Ortega, who's an attorney and works for the John Marshall Law School in Atlanta, Georgia, she put that together for us, and it's just really concrete and really specific, has some great examples of information sharing and pitfalls and challenges that folks encounter as they're doing that. So I encourage you all to check that out. All right, now I want to talk about the why. Why do we want to orient new team members, and why is it so important? And this is about team member buy-in. Again, when you have team members that come in, they can sometimes get that they come to staffing and what they're supposed to share, but they don't understand your philosophy. They don't understand what the point of the drug court is and why it's different. And so thinking about how to help them get that and how to also help them feel like they're actually a member of a team rather than an interloper just coming into your space can be really, really helpful. So there's a continuum, and my slide didn't translate very well here, but people always go through this. There are these 5 stages of people who are on a team, and it starts with this is BS and there's no way that I'm going to do it. And those are the people that are kind of the naysayers, right? And then you have to move people along this continuum. The next one says, no way, this will never work. And then the green one says, if I ignore it, maybe it will go away. And that's really my strategy when there are changes. I'm not a person who likes change a lot, so I just try to pretend it's not happening. But then you can move to that kind of gray square that says, I'll try it for a while, but I have my doubts. And after that, it's about time. What took so long? There are some people who want change and are really agitating for it, and those are the people that find themselves in that kind of dark blue square. And then we get back to the orange, which is, I've been doing this all along. And so that person's just been waiting for the rest of the team to catch up. So when you're thinking about getting new team members to buy in, think about where they're at on the continuum, but also think about where the rest of your team members are on this continuum, because a new team member might come in with some new ideas. It might feel pretty disruptive, especially if you're getting a new judge. A new judge might have lots of new ideas and the power to enact those ideas. And so your program might look really different after having a new judge. You know, after 6 months of a new judge, you might be doing things completely differently. So figuring out how to get on board with that is really important for team members. So how do you get team members to really buy into the concept of what you're trying to do with your juvenile drug court? Well, one of the ways is to give them ownership in the program. I know my tendency is to sort of hold people at arm's length and be like, look, I know what I'm doing. I'm sure you have good ideas. You probably should share those good ideas someplace else. So the important thing is to really be open to let new team members contribute to the overall process. And I don't think it has to happen on day one. You know, I think you can give them a couple of months to get their feet wet. But after that, you want to create ways for new team members to have input on the policies. So that's why I say if you guys are doing a revision to your policy and procedure manual, that's a great place to put new team members. Let them have a say into what things look like. Oh, Erica, you're raising your hand. Do you have a question? Would you like to write it into chat, or would you like me to unmute your phone? While you're typing there, I'm going to keep going talking about this, where we want you to conduct regular process meetings. Those are those, again, every 3 months, every 2 months. You have the kind of big picture, what are we in the business of doing? That'll give lots of time for team members, new team members, to contribute to the conversation and ask questions that might not make sense for them to ask, like during case staffing. Assign new team members to work on subcommittees. When you do this, though, you have to be willing to actually try their ideas, because you can't put team members on a committee and ask them for their input and then not also be willing to take their input. So you have to be really willing to challenge the status quo. Oh, so Erica, you just were getting reconnected. Appreciate that. Thanks for letting us know. So going back to don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. Thinking about myself again and how I am resistant to change. I know that it can be hard to have new team members come on board. I think even at the National Council, we do work in a team environment, although it's slightly different. But every time that somebody new comes into our team, we do have to think about that power and ownership and what we're willing to give up to let new team members have a say in what's happening. So always be very open to new team members and their ideas is my advice, and it's advice I keep trying to give myself as well. And again, especially if your new team member is the judge. All right, so let's talk about getting new team members to buy in, aligning the vision. So the very first suggestion here is to conduct a team building exercise with the new team. Every time you get a new team member, you have a new team. So you have to build a new team. That means that a team building exercise is a really good idea. There are team building exercises that can feel a little bit extreme in the touchy-feely department, right? Those trust fall exercises, or when somebody is like blindfolded and everybody else has to guide them through a maze, or those things. So those are great team building exercises, but there are easier ways to do team building, like having lunch as a team, right? Just getting together and talking about things outside of court. Asking team members to share their own personal philosophies about working with youth. So one of the things that we do at NCJ, FCJ, every time we come to work with a court is we start the session talking about this, talking about why you do the work. Because everybody who's working in these courts, all of you share pieces of a common philosophy. Most people believe in the transformative power of, treatment and want to help kids and families get better and be better. And so that philosophy can help make everybody feel like, oh, okay, even if I don't agree with you because I don't think your approach is the right one, I still know that we both want to get to the same destination. That is really, really powerful to know that. Asking new team members to share their hopes and concerns about working with your team. This is a way to have open communication to say, oh, you've been on the team for like 2 months now. What are you hoping to get out of working with us? And what's really bothering you? What are you afraid of with us? And giving them a chance to share that. That kind of conversation is really great to do one-on-one. I love it when I see judges have like a one-on-one conversation with new team members. They go to lunch and they have these talks because the judge is the leader of the team, can really help smooth over some of those things and help make the new team members feel welcome. And then again, this is the big point of this entire section, which is be willing to change your vision to incorporate new team members' ideas. Judge Jackson, you say you find it helpful for all of the team or a key group of team to go through training together. Yeah, talking about team building, going to training together is really, really helpful because everybody gets the same information, and so you don't have folks doing a lot of kind of back and forth and, oh, I don't think that's the way we should do it, because you all have the same grounding in information. So you're exactly right. And what we found is teams that travel together have even more team building, because you go out to dinner together, you spend a lot of time together. So if you can travel to the national conferences or travel to a different place in your state, that's a great idea. Even if you can't travel together, though, getting together, getting training, talking about what you learned at the training, what a great, easy way to team build where there's something built in, so it doesn't feel so artificial, which is, I think, one of those challenges with like those trust falls. That feels artificial to all of us, and so thinking about natural ways to do it. And then on team transition, my last question or my last point is don't forget about youth and families. This is a transition for them too. These new team members can seem kind of daunting and intimidating to youth and families because they haven't built a relationship. Teams altogether feel sort of daunting and scary to families and kids sometimes. I know one time I was working with a court, and they had a big team. They had 17 people on their team. One of our recommendations was that they didn't have 17 people on the team, but they did. So at the time that we were there, they had 17 people, and hopefully they changed it after we left. So as part of our visit with that team, we did interviews with youth and families. And so I asked this group of kids, I was like, so what's one thing that you find really frustrating about the court? And they identified the fact that there were all of these people sitting around this table, and they didn't really know who those people were or what they were supposed to be doing. And they felt really sort of offended that there were all these people that knew things about their lives that they didn't necessarily want them to know. And so I jokingly said, so do you want them to like just all wear name tags or what? And actually one of the kids said, yeah, that would be so great. And so think about how you appear to these kids and families, and think about what a new team member looks like from their point of view. So you definitely want to introduce team members to youth and families, and vice versa. You can do introductions either as part of your regular court, or you can have a separate meeting with each family. You want to make the link between your current team and the new team member. So it's always nice if the outgoing team member can introduce the new team member. I see this happen a lot when we have like a new case manager coming in and kind of taking over that role. Have a chance for kids and families to ask questions of the new team member to get a feeling for who this person is and what they want. We like the idea that the new team member brings snacks for the youth and families. There's no better way to get people on your side than to bring them a present. And then, of course, give families updated program materials. So they're going to need new contact sheets, etc. The other thing to think about when you have a new team member come in for youth and families, especially new like caseworkers and a new judge, is that sometimes kids aren't going to react well. And so you might see, after a pretty significant team transition, you might see some bad behavior. You might end up finding yourselves like, uh-oh, we're going to have to sanction a lot more. And that might not be because every single kid is having, a relapse or acting out in new ways. It could be because they're reacting to the change on the team. And so I would encourage you always to be thoughtful about that aspect of team transition. The last question I have today is to ask you, what have you done to introduce youth and families to new team members? So what good ideas do we have from the audience for introducing kids and families to the new team? Introduce new team members during orientation, family team meetings. That's a great idea. Have them come to team meeting to talk about expectations. Yep. When they first come into court, you could play like music like they do when they are introducing new players at sporting events. Introducing the new, no, maybe not. Conduct family meetings. Yep. During conference hearings. Oh, that's a good idea. They're going to be there anyway. Who they are and what their role is. Yep. And of course, if you ever want to know how kids and families feel about things like when new team members came on, how were they introduced to the group, it's always a good idea to talk to your kids and families. We love the idea of doing exit interviews when kids are graduating from the program, or even if they're terminated from the program, to ask them about questions like this to find out how that worked for them. So when you have new kids, you introduce them at the end of staffing. So that's nice. They get introduced to the team sort of away from the whole court. And then if there's a new team member, they get introduced at court. Great. All right, well, I'd like to thank you all for sharing the ways that you've introduced new team members to youth and families. Again, I think this is an often overlooked piece of our process, and thinking about creative ways to do it, I think, is always a good idea. The more fun you can have with it, I think the better off you are. And think about having your new team members wear a name tag for a while so that kids and families get used to who they are and what they do. I would like to ask now if there are any other questions about team transition. We want you to be thinking about the team as being a font of energy for creative thinking. So you want to be heading toward the future. You want to, when your team changes, you want to herald the new and celebrate the old, and you want to handle challenges together. That's the touchy-feely part of the training today. So this is just one part of our ongoing training series for juvenile drug courts. We are planning some upcoming webinars, and I'm hoping, how often should the team have team building exercises? Well, that's such a great question. So I think that retreat that we're talking about that we'd love for you to do once every year is a good time to do those team building exercises. But honestly, I think especially as you have change and as you have new team members, doing some lunches together and other opportunities to get together, do 2 or 3 of those, within 6 months of having a new team member, and that can be really, really helpful. But otherwise, think about it about once a year where you're sort of refreshing yourselves as a team and being revitalized. And even if you've been a team for a long time, that is a really important aspect of it. I'm glad folks are finding this helpful. We have recorded it, so you'll be able to come back to it and refer to it. You can download the PowerPoint in the file pod right above the chat window, and you can refer back to it. So Lisa, you guys have a new judge, and you're having a hard time getting the new judge sort of up to speed, and they're not even necessarily they want to be part of your drug court. So I would suggest in that instance that, well, you can try some of these strategies we talked about in the webinar, but that might actually be a good time to have the National Council come out and do on-site technical assistance with your team. If the judge is open to that, then what we would do is we'd come out and talk with your team about foundational issues around juvenile drug court, and we'd talk about how you guys can work together as a team, and that can help. It is definitely a team-building thing for folks, and it helps get the new judge on board as well. If the judge is open to it, we also can put your judge in touch with other judges so they can talk to the judge, talk to another judge and say, hey, I don't really get this. Why does this happen this way? And then, of course, if you can get your judge to view the role of the judge on the online learning platform. But I would say, Lisa, go ahead and give us a call if you want to have more in-depth conversation about this, because I think it is a tricky situation. And then my colleagues have posted that we are going to be doing more webinars. So our next one is on the 3-prong approach, and that is all about incentives and sanctions. We have a great 3-prong approach for that, so I would highly encourage everyone to sign up and to get the rest of your team to sign up too, because that is a big one. And it's a great way to approach incentives and sanctions that puts things squarely on a therapeutic framework, which is what we're looking for in drug courts. We don't want drug courts to operate like regular courts, and this really is a way for the court to be therapeutic without the court being treatment. So I encourage everyone to sign up for the 3-prong approach webinar. Otherwise, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation today.